What's going on, my beautiful people? This is Jules, your host of the podcast, Just the Tip. Where's the rest of it? Pat is currently on vacation this week, so we are Patless. But for right now, we have a co-host guest today, a very special co-host guest joining us from a large corporate company here in the U.S. that will remain nameless for now, simply for the sake of diplomacy. We'll leave it at that. Um, My good friend Ashton is joining us today. Ashton, say hey, Ashton.
What's up, everybody?
All right. And this episode is special, guys. This episode is a little more serious. It's not a slapstick. Maybe it might get there. Uh, but we definitely want to address an important issue within the service industry, one that goes highly overlooked, you know, just about as much as tipping and etiquette and all the other shit that I bitch about. I think that mental health awareness is a big problem in the industry. I think that mental health awareness gets highly overlooked. And there are a lot of people that are serving you that are, handling your dining experience and making it just wonderful for you that are going through some serious mental health struggles. I will be the first to say that, I am one of them. Uh, as controlled and as composed as I try to be and hold a job within the service industry, it isn't always successful. Mental health problems do come knocking on the door and they are serious. They do heavily affect your ability to perform and to be the star that you are when it comes to the service industry. What do you think, Ash? How does mental health issues, how has it affected your career?
Well, for a while there, I couldn't hold down a job for very long because of my mental health. Like, I am bipolar manic depressive and I suffer from extreme highs and lows. And trying to maintain composure when you're in a manic episode is not the easiest feat.
Much less when you have guests tugging at your shirt like little kids wanting extra ranch and their tater tots weren't loaded.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like when you're in a manic episode, any little thing can set you off. And having those nagging moments where it's like, I need, can just really set you off.
Yeah. And I think that we can both agree that unfortunately the job doesn't care, the customer doesn't care. There no one really cares. So I think that when it comes to these mental health issues, we're kind of abandoned. We don't really have a backup and support system. I think that one time when we worked together in this nameless company that can go fuck themselves, um, when we worked together, somebody just threw out, and as a joke, not even as like a serious situation, they saw me going through it at a moment and was like, they offer some counseling, right? Like they thought it was a funny thing that they had to mention to me that, that company offered counseling. And at that moment, I really thought like you're making fun of the fact that you're noticing that I could use some help right now. Like, you douchebag. Uh, what do you think about the way that the companies that you've worked for and the company that you currently work for, how sensitive are they to our mental health issues? How much do they care?
I think it all boils down to the individual manager. I've worked with some managers that were very understanding of the fact that I have mental health issues, and I've worked with some that one manager's exact words were, well, if you can't be happy, maybe you should find another job, which is not something you say to someone with depression because it's not that we don't want to be happy. It's literally we can't be happy. We have a chemical imbalance that is not allowing us to be happy when we want to be.
No, I've heard and I've been told by people who have evaluated these conditions that have told me these aren't legitimate conditions for uh, work. You know, if you happen to lose your job because of it, these aren't legitimate conditions for unemployment or disability. Do you agree with these deductions?
Oh yeah, the government still doesn't consider mental health to be a uh,
Excuse me.
what word am I looking for?
Legitimate conditions.
Legitimate conditions to if you lose your job. It's just, oh well, you didn't perform your job.
So what we're saying is that a person who is physically disabled, the society and the government is willing to pick up the slack and help them out and basically look after them. But people who are mentally, mentally health disabled to a debilitating point, we're left with nothing.
Pretty much right now, but I think there is a movement that has made mental health awareness more prominent. Um, so I'd expect to see some changes in the future regarding mental health.
Do you think that within our workforce, within our task workforce, there are it's more prevalent that mental health issues such as, for example, in my case, bipolar disorder, um, other disorders such as well, I highly doubt that a schizophrenic waiter would make it very far, but borderline personality disorder,
I don't know. It'd be a new
Asperger's
experience every
disorder,
time.
the what?
It'd be a new experience every time.
Yeah, but we never make it very far, do we?
Oh yeah, I mean, in my career path, I'm a manager right now. I would not be a manager if I wasn't medicated, which I am.
So great. Let's circle back to one of the solutions to these problems because people with mental health issues also have to have a job. We also have to hold a job. Ironically enough, a lot of us gravitate to the hospitality and service industry because our conditions make us people pleasers. They make us, want the approval of society and they make us, want to be rewarded for it, for achieving the people pleaser status, which is not healthy, by the way. It's not good for a bipolar person or a person with a borderline personality disorder or somebody who suffers from low self-esteem issues, uh, any type of these, even like anorexia nervosa, bulimia, all these conditions, they rely a lot on psychological reassurance of, your self-esteem. And unfortunately, the service industry is the worst industry to pick to be validated on that level for your self-esteem and, the things that these neuroses that we go through uh, demand the type of attention and validation that they demand. The service industry is the worst place to look for it. I think that managers, number one, are the first ones to be like, hey, and what's that age old saying that we've heard all our lives since we entered the workforce? Leave your shit at the door. And for bipolar people, borderline personality disorder people, schizophrenic people, can we leave our shit at the door? I mean, I I say I leave it at the door, and I may not speak on it, but it's in my mind. It's definitely in my head, and it might be on the tip of my tongue, but is that it definitely doesn't get left at the door. So your advice to people who are in this industry that go through these issues, what would you say is the best way to cope? What's your coping mechanism? What's helped you get through it?
My coping mechanism has been my medication. Like, I do owe a lot to my medication. I've been lucky enough to find a combination that works. So for me, medication has been the coping mechanism that allows me to function normally.
Do you feel the sense of community also from your company, be it as it may. Our opinions differ on it a little right now, but we work for the same company. We no longer know more, so fill in the blank. That's why I'm not on the same page. But do you feel that the support and the out the presence of your coworkers in the company that you currently work for has given you the support you need to at least go to work and feel like you can get through the day?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
What would you say is the toughest moment that you've had to go through with your mental struggles while you have to be in this industry, while you have to grin and bear it?
I would say that before I was medicated, when my manias were in full swing, and certain manias were more prevalent than others, having to get past those. Like in the service industry, you have to be talkative. And one of my manias, I would not be talkative. I would be completely silent. I would not communicate at all. And having to overcome that and still function was a huge obstacle to overcome.
When you would find that it was an obstacle, did you find yourself being too reactive to the point that it was getting you in trouble?
Oh, yeah. Because, like I said, it all comes down to the individual manager. And I had a management team that did not understand that.
What would you say is the most trying time that you held down in like, let's say, what was the moment that you were on the floor, had a mental breakdown and held it down? What held you through that?
I didn't. I quit. I did. I had a I had a manic period going on, and I got rubbed the wrong way one too many times, and I told them, "Fuck you," I quit.
Yeah, but I can relate. Been there, done that. You know, um, Sister company of the company we used to work for did the same thing. I was like, fuck you, fuck off, eat my butthole, and I walked out of there. And said, I don't give a shit. I knew what was gonna happen. Didn't bother even, waiting for the year fired. I was at a day where I was at a mental breaking point, and um, you know, like I said in the previous episode, and I'll repeat it again, you never know what the person that is serving on you is dealing with. Um, Sometimes they're dealing with, you know, things that to you might seem petty, financial issues, financial burdens, losses, financial setbacks, failing in school. And other times we're dealing with some serious shit. We're dealing with, recently becoming a widower or a widow, recently, losing your parents, being in the middle of bereavement and having to deal with somebody who's ultra concerned whether your tater tots are gluten free or not. So when your heart is in a million pieces and your mind is swirling in some fucking, black hole whirlpool, and this lady over here is, grinding you on whether these tater tots are fucking gluten free or not. For a normal person, I would say that it's very hard to keep it together. For someone like us, what tends to happen, Ash?
You're fired.
That's it. You're out. This industry is very unforgiving in that respect. Um, in your opinion, when you tell your jobs and you warn them ahead of time of what's going on, do you feel discriminated? Do you feel like they're just looking for a reason, and any and everything is oh, this happened because of your condition and we just can't deal with your condition? Or do you feel like they eggshell around you? Like, how, when you tell your job what's going on with you, how do you feel they handle it?
Well, we work in a state that's right to work, so they can fire you for any reason or no reason whatsoever. And I think they use that as a smokescreen to catch all. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, but I've worked for companies in the past that I've confided in that I have mental health issues and was faced with backlash, and I've worked for companies that I've confided that I have mental issues and I've been met with open arms.
And they contributed to your treatment and, probably followed up with on it and, would constantly keep a monitoring, like how you doing, everything okay? No, none of that.
No, I mean they would follow up. They're like, "How you doing? How you feeling? Everything okay today?" But as far as like contributing to my treatment, no, that was all on my own. Unless the company offered, health care and everything like that.
I feel like every time that I have divulged the fact that, I'm struggling with bipolar mania disorder, um, it sets the precedent for people to just start counting them. Oh, that's his first flip out. Oh, that's his first crash out. Oh, no, this isn't gonna work. But if I don't, I've done the research, I've done the legwork here, and I've made sure not said a word about it to anyone. And instead of, oh, there's a problem here, and write ups and meetings and this and that, it's more of a, oh, Jules is just, he's so sassy. Oh, that guy has an attitude, and oh, he's just so sassy. Sassy, that fucking word, sassy, like a pissed off cat, like this hungry cat that's been screeching in the background for a minute. Sorry, listeners, we're recording live semi outdoors right now, and this starving cat, which I already fed, by the way, I did my good deed. By the way, Ashton, is he screaming?
Not anymore,
No,
but on and off.
yeah, he's been just shrieking as though I fed him. I fed him and everything. Okay. Anyhow, back to what we were talking about. I feel like every time that I've told a job, that something is going on, they're just looking for every incident. Seems to kind of uh, coincide with what I said, and they'll be like, "Oh no, well, you said you had a problem, and I think this isn't good. This isn't a good fit." Versus when I don't say anything, it turns out that just Jules is just this sassy gay guy that has a lot of attitude, and they laugh at it. And half the time, when I'm crashing out, they think I'm playing with them, and I'm like, I know I was freaking out at the time. I was talking shit, and what they don't realize that the real crash out is when I'm silent. And that's when it's like, oh, something's wrong. He's not saying shit. Um, I feel like restaurants are probably one of the poorest equipped industries and places to handle employees with mental health issues, and I think that they they carry a stigma with it. They don't want them. They don't. Who wants a crazy waiter? Who's But if you can fake it till you make it, which I have for many years, you can get by for a while. But eventually, the crazy will sneak up on you, and if you're not, like you said, if you're not medicated, there will be consequences, and there always is. Um, so your advice is to medicate.
Medication works for me. Um, for other people, it's it's a very personal thing. So, like I said, medication works for me. I can't function without it. For other people, they have ways of finding their own coping mechanisms that allow them to function, whether that be self medication, whether that be immersing yourself in a hobby or interest that distracts you.
Like podcasting.
Yeah, like podcasting. Um, so I think every person's journey is just a deeply personal, individual choice.
Okay, so your treatment, the way that you're coping, is your own personal choice.
Yes.
You can choose to chemically cope, cope, which isn't always the best. Um, but as long as you're doing it within reasonable limits, if you're having a drink or two to unwind in a joint, I don't think you're breaking any huge laws there. Past that, it's a judgment call. And a judgment call, what I mean by judgment call is how far you want to go, down the rabbit hole. I've gone all the way down the rabbit hole, just to put it lightly, and you won't get anywhere that way. Um, when it comes to mental health issues, my advice, the only thing that's worked for me, because pills didn't work for me. Like, Ashton has gotten on a regulated medication schedule and it works for him and he's controlled his manias. Pills seem to kind of exasperate the problem. And that will be further along in, the book that I write. There will be a full narrative of what happened when we went down the pill road. We won't go all the way down that road today. It doesn't matter. It's over. It's done with. But it didn't work. So for me, I will tell people that are struggling with this and need to keep a job and hold a job in the industry, exercise. Exercise your ass off. Exercise, meditate. I gotta, I will admit that I'm still herbally, herbally supplementing all of the exercise. My psychiatrist didn't say no, but he didn't say he could say yes either. However, since I've taken up this form of therapy, exercise and cannabis therapy, uh, I've held down jobs for much longer than I ever have, and I think Ashton is witness to one of that until a mania came along and just kind of ruined everything. And Ashton was witness to that. Ashton, in your opinion, do you believe that a mania was occurring with me at the time when I lost my job?
Oh, absolutely.
When you witnessed it, what did you think you could do or say about it? Did you feel that there was any type of intervention you could do that would stop what was going to happen?
Oh no, because once that train left the station, that train was derailed.
It was headed for disaster. It was. It was. It was. Um, and unfortunately, these manias come to sneak up on you either when you're at a point where there's more responsibility put on you and the burden starts to feel heavier, or when you're triggered. Me personally, I felt I was triggered. I was highly triggered. Um, I was very safe, and that's another thing about people with mental health issues in the workplace. When you are working, you mentioned that earlier. When you're working with someone you feel safe with, you're safe. You know, and for a long while with the company we were with, I felt safe with the people that were running it. Everyone was to be trusted. And the moment that the new people came in, I told you, I told all, the managers that were my friends, I said, you mark my words, my days are numbered here. These people don't like me. And I knew it. And it's not because of any other bigoted, reason that I claimed. It's just that mental health issues really do matter in the workplace and they are really prevalent. Um, People who first meet you and don't know you, and if you have a mental health issue, they can usually tell right away if they're on their game and if they're smart enough, they'll know. I'm not dealing with an entirely whole person here. Um, and they will be aloof and wary and always just kind of looking out for things when it comes to the workplace. Socially and personally, that's a whole different story. But in the workplace, when you have a new manager or new someone taking over, they meet you and they see that there's something there. Like I told you all from the moment I met those people, I said my days are numbered. You mark my words, I'm done. They saw the crazy in me and they don't like it. They didn't, evidently. And again, that's fine. Um, these things happen. Like you said, this is why you're on medication. You endured all that. You endured the craziness of the shift and the change. Change is huge for bipolar people. That's what trips us up. You know, trips us up like a fucking tight wire, you're running and they just pull a tight wire on you and you just trip so hard. Change does that to a bipolar person, and unfortunately, people who don't know anything about that will never see that, and they think, "Oh, you're being such a pussy. You're being such a baby. You're not. You're not. You're just. You gotta adapt. You have to adapt." I'm one of the most adaptable people on earth, I believe. However, when I'm in a comfortable setting and I'm good, and I'm on my game, and I was at the top of my game, I believe, with this company. But as soon as the leadership changed and I saw that, I was not favored, I was like, your days are numbered. And for that one reason and that one reason only, I made it about a million reasons in the middle of my mania. I thought it was this, and that, and I blamed so many things. No, they saw that you have mental stability issues and they were not going to deal with that. As a new management staff, they were probably like, we don't have time to deal with that. Bye. We don't need you either. So mental health issues will affect your job in that way. You will get judged. You will get discriminated against. However, they will not openly say it. They will not openly admit it. And it's not something they're going to declare. They'll make it about everything else except the issue that we're talking about right now. In your experience in management, do you agree that the paper trail is made mostly about everything except mental health issues because they're smart enough to know you can't discriminate mental health issues?
We'll admit that the paper trail is important because that's how you cover your ass, basically. Um, as far as
How honest is the paper trail and how objective is the paper trail? Is it really about what the paper trail is about, or is it about we're just trying to get rid of this person when they have an obvious mental health issue?
again, it depends on the individual because some people are able to control their manias and it's not an issue. Some people aren't, and it is an issue. And a lot of times managers are just having to, or not having to, but trying to do things by the book. The the rule book that the company sets forth is, and this is how our standard operating procedure goes. So
And what about, of course, we're medicated, right? But some of these medications we take, they're narcotic based medications. So these restaurants, if they know that you have a prescription for it, but you're taking it, you know, is this something in management? Is this something that you all see as acceptable? Is it something that you turn a blind eye to? Because they're on narcotics and working.
with a prescription, it is acceptable. That's the only way that it's acceptable.
So let's say, so and so is on Xanax and just fucking it up. They got a prescription though, but they're just dropping trays and they're just, high out their ass on Xanax. Would you fire them for that?
Not outright.
Create the paper trail.
Well, not. Yes, you have to create the paper trail that you have to document because, like I said earlier, Texas is a right to work state, so you don't have to have a reason. You don't have to have anything. You can just fire somebody. However, creating the paper trail is all about documentation. And creating that paper trail shows that you gave that person every opportunity to improve a situation. And you took it upon yourself, or not you took it upon yourself, but you did your due diligence to try to help that person as well.
Now, does your company due diligence again, we're talking about mental health issues. So let's say I'm not going to say in my case, because I'm not going to, play victim and talk about me. Let's say we're talking about somebody else who you see clearly has a mental health issue. They're doing things, they're doing things like calling pink lady drinks pink as their nipples and, talking to tables, saying things like that. Um, you see there's a clearly mental health issue and they tell you I'm struggling with, alcoholism or whatever I'm struggling with, and does your company provide the help that this person needs to come back to work, to to make them whole again? Does your company care enough to do that?
They provide the tools, but that's all. Because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So if a person has mental health issues, you can't make them seek out treatment, whether that's speaking to a psychiatrist or getting medication or self medicating or just finding whatever routine that they need to implement to function. So,
And if the routine, if these steps that are taken and the routine doesn't work and nothing's working, then you find ways to amicably part ways. Is that not right?
correct.
Correct. This is a corporate entity. And this is where the corporate entity may wash their hands of the incident and cover their asses. But this is where, in my opinion, Jules' opinion, they ain't shit. And I'll say this because they'll send the person off to their destiny. Their destiny being what? The mom and pop shop that I worked for, where, my anecdote for this is a mom and pop shop that I worked for that had an employee working for them for 15 years plus as a GM. The employee fell in hard times, lost his arm in a car wreck, lost his mother to cancer within a very short span of time together. Uh, the employee struggled a lot with addiction and alcoholism and mental health struggles due to the losses he'd had. It's not surprising. The mom and pop shop that we worked for tried and they worked and they did everything they could for short of dragging him to a rehab to help him. They forgave so many you know uh, mistakes. Mistakes like not locking the front door of the restaurant. Mistakes like not being there to open the restaurant and the entire restaurant not being ready to go at 11 o'clock a.m. Nothing being ready to go because he didn't show up. um, Things that were happening that just were hurting the business. And I remember having a conversation on April 19th of 2019 with the owner, and he was angry as hell. And I was sitting in Bernie bartending, and the owner of this company walks by and says, the GM didn't go open at the other location on Westover Hills, and I'm sick of this shit. And I said, try to be easy on him. Give him give him a little slack. He's going through some hard times. And the owner tells me, Mijo, his hard times are gonna cost me my job, my business. I can't rely on these things. At that moment in time, that owner was telling me that this GM's mental health problems, the loss of his mother, the loss of his arm, all these things weren't legitimate enough to warrant let's take it easy. So he was just ready to raise hell. And he went to the restaurant and didn't find him. Called him and called him and called him and couldn't get a hold of him. And so when he finally decided to call up SAPD to do a wellness check and go check on him, they found him at home, hanging from his staircase with a vacuum cord. People, businesses need to care about their people. That's the worst instance that I can probably give you. And I'm sorry to have to say it so bluntly on air that way. Um, to Eric Burns' memory, I don't think, you know, I I'm sure he would have loved it to be said in a more softer way, but that's what happened. That's what can happen, and leads to that's what it leads to. when companies do not stop to pay attention what's going on with the mental health of your employees. We lost a good one. We lost a GM. And to this day, I'm sure I'm not the only person from that company that will say, what could I have done? What could I have said to him? And unfortunately, the last thing I said to him, I was angry. We were arguing about something petty. I wanted some shift to be done within the company, and he didn't want to move me somewhere, and I was angry. And so he said goodbye to me before he left, and I rolled my eyes at him. That was the last thing I did, guys. I rolled my eyes at him. So when you see a cry for help at work, don't ignore it. Reach out. I have my friend here, Ashton, who I can always reach out to, and vice versa. Um, we both go through the same thing, and so I asked Ashton earlier, what's been the worst thing that you've gone through as far as a cry for help? And he's like, I haven't really seen much, but why is that, Ashton? When you told me, I asked you like, why have I said, what was the worst thing you've seen, and you said, I haven't really seen anything, and I was like, why?
Oh, as heartless as it sounds, because I don't care. The reason I say that is I've overcome a lot in my life. Like, I've overcome drug addiction, I've overcome homelessness, I've overcome a lot of things. And I did that because I set my mind to do it. And I see a lot of people who would rather use as a crutch, whether that the drugs are a crutch or the understanding and forgiveness of somebody is an emotional crutch. And they're not looking to get better. They're just looking for their next crutch,
An excuse.
an excuse.
Hmm.
And I got tired of looking for excuses. So
Would you say you were doing excuses for a minute at any given point in time? Were you giving excuses? Yeah.
was I given excuses? Um,
To your job, say about whenever you would fall short, or me, for example, I'm always when I would snap on a customer, I'd break down and start being like, I'm kind of bipolar. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. It's just that, like, do you ever give excuses, or were you just like, fuck it? Yeah.
I was always just fuck it. But that was because I had a lot of people who flat out told me they didn't care. So I'm like, well, if you don't care, I don't care. And so my whole opinion was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to give you an excuse. I just don't give a fuck.
Uh-huh. Pre-healing Jules, and when I mean pre-healing, I mean pre-ex-boyfriend dying and healing from all that. Healing Jules. Pre-healing Jules never gave a fuck, and I certainly would walk right out of jobs and walk right into another and not give a fuck, and fuck you. I don't care. I don't need your job. Post healing Jules has responsibilities. And they say that part of healing is taking on responsibility. The more responsibility you take, the more healed you become. Shit. So I should be completely healed by now. God damn. But, you know, these projects, this that we're doing right now, it's our contribution to. There's a lot of people at home right now who are popping open cans and having a drink, but they're doing it alone. And cheers, that we aren't. Uh, but in good company, and we're having a constructive session here where we're helping the people in our industry who don't even realize they're gonna go. It's happened to me before, even at Bubba's, or yeah, we'll strike that later. Even at the company we used to work for, um I would come home over a situation and it would just roll and roll and roll and roll. Who does that? Only bipolar people. only neurotic people, only people with neuroses and schizophrenia and borderline personality disorders, things that are real. You know, we will go home and spin that around and around and around. We won't sleep, and then we'll come to work the next day so tense, shoulders up to here, thinking that it's still an issue, and you run into the person, and they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" They fucking forgot. They didn't go home and they didn't give a shit about it. They didn't think about it. They didn't think about you or that situation all night long, and we go home and torture ourselves over it. So this industry is very unforgiving in that way. And you have a very good tactic by saying, like you said, as heartless as it may seem, you don't give a shit. But you have to learn to not give a shit. If you, in fact, have these issues and if they affect you as deeply as they do, you have to learn to let it, take it with a grain of salt. Let it, what do they say? Let it roll off your back. Let it, what's the other one?
Oh, it's like I tell my employees whenever they come up and like, this table's being rude to me. It's like I tell them, are you really gonna
Suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah, are you really gonna let the equivalent of 30 seconds ruin your night, ruin your day, ruin your week, ruin your month? Or are you just gonna suck it up, get them the fuck out the door, and on to the next one? Because if you let something like that take control of you, then that's always going to control you. It's always going to dominate you. But if you don't care and you let it, like you said, roll off your back, then you flip the roles and you take control of the situation and you dominate the situation.
If you had to say, when you're just, I've seen you in your days when Ashton's not in the mood days. We'll just call it that day. When Ashton's not in the mood day, what is the worst thing that one of your employees can come and do to you when it's Ashton's not the one day?
Just anything stupid. Anything will set me off.
But these kids breathe stupidly. So I mean, just breathing. I mean, sometimes I hear them breathing and I want to slap them. I just, just I don't know. It's a generational thing. Gen X, I guess. No, when you're okay. If I were to say, because I wasn't a manager at your company, but in my thing, if I go back into the managing shoes and wear my manager hat, like Chris Jenner says, if I wear my manager hat, and I think the thing that used to get me most when I was just in the middle of a mania and these servers, two words, two fucking words that would make me just want to punch them in the throat. I'm tired. I'm tired. This day and age, when I hear I'm tired, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, I say, "Oh, work at work? You gotta be kidding me. That just fucking sucks. Work at work is just as wild. Work at work. Are you kidding me? They're asking you to work at work." Ah.
Or when they've only been at work for 2.5 hours
And they
they're
say,
complaining, I'm tired.
"Ah, ah." So I punch them in the throat with my pinky. Yeah. Set their car on fire. Just blame them for my mistake. Whatever. I don't care. Um, well, coming down or bringing the segment down from, we went to a really dark place for a moment, guys. I'm sorry we went there, but that was just to show you guys how far things can go. Um, and if we wanted to take it not further, but get a little more personal, me myself, your host, has been to the dark side and back, and I've made it back. Um, from mental health issues and substance abuse issues and all kinds of shit going on. Um, Stuff that people don't really come back from. I made it back and I'm here. We did this podcast. this was just a talk 2 years ago. Um, it would have never happened without the belief of the people that I've worked with, without the love of the friends that I've met, without the non-stop, bitchery of my family, just, getting me into, whipping me into shape. They had to do it. Everyone had to do it. But mental health issues and people with mental health issues are not easy to deal with. They're not a walk in the park. They're not cooperative. We don't just roll over and say, okay. We don't, just doesn't happen that way. And as Ashton said earlier, you can't help somebody that doesn't want help. Is that right?
Correct. Like if you don't want help, then it doesn't matter what tools you're given, what help you're given, you're going to ignore it.
Exactly. And you're wasting your breath. Instead, people feel the need to walk away in that instance. And again, this is why we're here. We're two people who go through it. We don't want you to walk away. In the middle of my crazy shit, I don't, and I'm, just letting loose and what that, and I'm telling everyone to leave me alone and, go away. That's not what I really want. You want someone to get to the root of it. So if you love someone, if you care enough about, if you care about someone enough and you see that they're really going through it in this industry, they're your coworker, they're your boss, they're your busser, they're your whomever, they're your, the kitchen lady in the back chopping vegetables, going through some shit, you know, get to the root of it. Find out what's going on at the center of it all. Talk to these people. Don't judge them. Don't criticize them. Don't tell them what to do. Don't tell them what their problem is. Sometimes you just need to listen. If you just ask a question or two, they'll tell you everything you need to know. And from there, you can decide whether you want to take an active role. You don't want to be an enabler and you don't want to get involved in people's life or a meddler or anything like that. But as far as reason, can allow you and as far as is reasonable, um, do your part. Do your part for the people in the industry who are suffering from from mental health issues. And with this, we will say goodnight to you all. It has been a joy to have my good friend Ashton, who can easily relate with me on all of this. It was such an easy combo to have. A little somber, but it was it was really refreshing to have a guest with me in Pat's absence. I hope she's having a great vacation. We might even drop in on her while she's in vacation and get her to give us a little preview of what she's doing. But thank you, Ash, so much for joining us. We appreciated you and your testimony and your experience on the and your expertise on this issue. So until next time, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to Just a Tip. Where's the rest of it? I'm your host, Jules. This was our co-host guest today, Ashton. He again, we will leave his company nameless. But Ashton, thank you so much for joining us. And one quick hello to the camera and goodbye. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.